Hello, my name is Grace Lighthouse, and I'm thankful today to be here with Mother Earth and able to share with you a story of hope, to give all of creation hope for as we transition into a new world and accept purity of food, water, and shelter and spirit. We can cleanse and purify our mind, bodies, and spirits and move into a direction of complete healing from Mother Earth, Mother Sky, and every bit in between. And I'm thankful today, by the assistance of Divine, that I survived an environmental exposure, a real tricky load of environmental toxins, spiritual awakening and patterns, and a lot of retraining after an extreme trauma from pesticides in my water and toxic mold and Lyme's disease and an autoimmunity. I'm thankful to get to the other side and be able to share my story and maybe trigger a little bit of watering some seeds that have been planted by many masters and elders who have gone before us on this same genre, to really choose life and let go of fear and accept that we can heal all the way. We are not sick. We are in repair. Mother Earth is not contaminated. Mother Earth is healing. And I'm here to definitely share that indeed can happen when you have the connection of mind, body, and spirit. So once the consciousness of how my being and formation and evaluation of, from the toxicity and on the physical level, I was introduced to looking at the biochemistry, like going very deep with this, back to protocols such as barefoot grounding, Mother Earth, cotton, pure water and air, and that's been a constant search in understanding that. Working through that biochemistry and realizing the genetics which came into form within my being, set aside from even environmental at that point, to the point I really came into formation. Being the middle of 9 children and coming into a family filled with love and filled with clear intention to be of healthy vibration and spiritual health. Now looking back, I understand more what my health as a child and a lot of things that were on my path. I was born from a wonderful mother and father, which both had amalgams, mercury in their mouths. So once I started realizing why some of my valves were shut and not flowing, you go back to the beginning of your being, and then you see what you came into form. So I had very high levels of mercury, to the point that doctors could not even figure out how this could have happened. And that's when we went way back to the beginning in the biochemistry and realized, and you study where you came from, and realized that mercury was already in my DNA. So I was pre-exposed to environmental issues before I even entered the earth form, like entered out of my mother. All my childhood, I had an autoimmune situation, a lot of strep throat, and a lot of just immunity issues. Of course, being the middle of 9 children, that's part of the call. But it was definitely a little bit abnormal. So again, going back to biochemistry, going back to our genetics, our genes which detoxify the system, and realizing that my body chemistry actually was missing a few of those detoxifying genes. So being in and exposed to many chemicals and molds and just different things would trigger my system a little bit more, and not really flowing out because I didn't have those genes built into my DNA. So it was not getting out. That's why it kind of just reached its point at 41 years old, that it was a boiling pot of water that popped. All my life, I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand my mind, body, and spirit, and constantly being called to how to better myself. I made many, many mistakes, as we all do on the human path, with diet and, you know, different exposures that I placed in, from painting a room a bunch of times to nail the right yellow, but exposing myself over and over. And, you know, I definitely have always been cleaning houses wherever I've gone, and I've been called to just sort of keep my environment clean from the moment I was born. And that definitely added to my top of exposure. Starting in about 2007, after multiple years of immunity, but keeping it balanced with a lot of exercise and a lot of spiritual work, I was sustaining and everything was pretty in flow. A lot of triggers on the emotional level, because when you are carrying a toxic load or you have a gut that has been compromised, as we know, our gut is our brain, so we're not making definitive answers when we're not in alkalinity. So I started really looking into those issues, and in 2007 my immunity started crashing at points that even many doctors were scratching their heads, like not quite sure what to explain. I remember in 2008 I went to see a doctor in Idaho where I was living, and she told me I had chemical sensitivity, and I did not understand what she said necessarily. I was at that time working in people's homes, doing home organization, home health aid, and cleaning houses. So I was exposing myself to chemicals to make some money as well. But I didn't understand how that could have been so extreme. And at that point, I was living on a farm in Idaho, surrounded by fields that still the farmers at that time are still in this area, actually still now using crop dusters as a form of pesticide. They would fly around the house, they would drive their tractors, and I would bring my dogs, and we would go inside the house, and yeah, maybe not feel so good. The smell was intense, but I did not really in consciousness understand just how much that was affecting me mentally, physically, and spiritually. My immunity was crashing. I was chronic fatigue. I started having lots of questions, or doctors had lots of questions with concerning lumps and bumps, and it all kind of just sparked off and came on pretty fast. Yes, I lived in an old farmhouse, and as I mentioned before, I painted rooms a lot because I, again, was not so clear how serious mold was. So being in a farm environment, having an exposure to pesticides, but also being in this home that was an old farmhouse that dealt with major amounts of snow, and my windows would leak, and I would get little bits of mold around the windows, and I each spring would paint and do what we all think is the right way, bleach or clean it off. Well, I did not know just how toxic that situation can be. It was really compromising me on levels that again, were very concerning. The doctor in Rexburg had said, you know, your chemical sensitivity farm area is not good. All these interesting things are piling up in your system, and maybe being, you know, closer to family where you have support so that we can get to the bottom of it and you can heal your body. My body needed to rest and heal. I have a grad degree in gerontology, and I left the farm and went back to Indiana, where I'm from, and I moved into a home on a lake, and the home was missed by an inspector with black mold in the system and bat feces pumping through. So I moved into this home in the fall and turned the heat on right away, and within 2 weeks time I was in and out of every kind of contrast dye, every kind of test, getting MRIs, colonoscopies, endoscopies, biopsies, everything. 2 weeks. I had prior been in Idaho and snowboarded over 100 days a year. I was physically fit and strong, and yes, my system was, having its difficulty, but it was still maintaining. And once I started then really addressing and being open to more medical advice to look and see what was even causing it, opened up a door that I was not really knowing I was opening up. I put a lot of faith in my team, so I thought they were of MDs. I trusted them to get the answers, as that's their field. And I kind of let go of some of my power and didn't really ask so many questions about many things entering my little being in such a quick amount of time. So again, geographically at this point, I'm in Indiana, moved in this home. Heat is on, environmental toxins are blowing, and I'm still unaware that that's what it is. I had an absolutely beautiful home. I keep a clean home. I never would have thought that environmental issues could be the reason this was happening to my body and my mind and my spirit. I couldn't understand that. And of course you go to MDs and you have colon issues, you have all these issues, but the definitive solution was still yet unclear. On October 8th, 2012, my life changed in a way I'm very thankful for. I was going to doctors and I was getting more and more compromised along the path. At that point, being a woman that really wants to always be the best I can be, I had definitely been advised on the mental level to take pharmaceuticals to balance, at times immunity goes down and anxiety or these types of mental behaviors come up. And really now what I know, it's toxicity. I had some clear overload, but at that time, I was told no more medicines. We need to get to the bottom of it, and let's take this route. And so on October the 8th, I went for a colonoscopy and to figure out my digestion, why everything I would eat would burn and break me out in a rash. All of a sudden, I couldn't find water that wouldn't burn and feel like glass going into my system. I couldn't walk straight. And I went for a colonoscopy, and they suggested that there was some sort of infection. They were unclear. So further investigation, on a Tuesday, the 8th, I went for a colonoscopy, and on Thursday, I went for an endoscopy. And I was told that I had some lymph nodes that were extremely concerning, and so they wanted biopsies, that there was definitely an infection. I remember even after, like during the endoscopy, there was a nerve tapped, and even under sedation, I was woken up in the middle of the procedure, like something happened to my system that I woke straight up out of it. Still is it really kind of scared me, because it then triggered off into, simple doctors saying, we're going to look into your lymphs, take these biopsies and get you better. You're going to be fine. And it kind of went the other direction. Whatever was cut, something was cut that was not, they thought was an infection, when indeed it was actually black mold. And it was going down into my system, and they triggered into it, so it opened the wound up. This is how I've been explained what happened. From that next day on, every time I was touched, I would bruise. I could not swallow food. I couldn't be around food. Everything was shutting down, and I didn't understand. Family didn't understand. So doctors continued to seek. That very next week, starting on Monday, I never will forget this time in my life, but they sent me to eat radioactive eggs to light up the system and see possibly what was adding to the problem. So I ate these radioactive eggs, and I'll be honest, I lost my mind. I was screaming in the test room. It was burning me alive. At that point, I really woke up to these solutions are triggering something in my brain as well. Like, it's poison. It's not right. And I know that's a high frequency word, but it is truth in action. So then on starting like Tuesday, after that situation, doctors were trying, I think, with intention to help, but kept adding these chemicals and these biopsies, and it just was not the time. My body was very weak. I went in and they wanted to light me up with barium. They did a barium swallow, and I had a complete allergic reaction to that. Then the next day they put nuclear solution in, and I remember as before they put the nuclear solution in, the guy asked me if I really wanted to accept this into my system. I think people along the path started noticing she's not getting better, something's really going on here, and let's not do it. But I trusted my doctors. I wanted to get better. I wanted to walk again, talk again. I'm a working bee, and my life was shutting down. So I allowed this test to go on, and then it just, from that point on, it was MRIs with contrast dyes, all sorts of things. It was a boiling pot of water with every kind of chemical, every kind of medication, every kind of antibiotic, trying to go after what we did not know what we were still looking for, which was right in front of the face. I guess when you start experiencing such a physical shutdown, in my opinion, one of the most important questions a doctor could ask is, what are you going home to? And many people have beautiful homes, absolutely beautiful, keeping them clean. It's what is pumping through your system, what is your water, what is your air, what is the food with which you are eating, what is the work which you are exposing yourself to, the people you are exposing yourself to. Are you being supported on your path of light and moving forward in a positive direction? Anyway, these questions really weren't brought to the fence until I reached the point of basically not walking, talking, not sleeping. I hadn't slept for 9 months. I couldn't sleep. Everything was, again, shutting down. And so finally, I got a phone call on a Saturday from one of my sisters. And she said she thought she may have an answer to what was happening. And I had prayed for a while, like, am I ever going to be normal again? This call came in January, so from October to January, I was in that house. All those exposures going in. I started clearly losing weight because I couldn't get anything past me without it feeling like glass. And she said she had done some research and asked some people, and she thought it was Lyme's disease. So we set up an appointment with a holistic doctor. And I walked into that doctor's office, and immediately as she looked into my eyes, she said, indeed, there's Lyme, but there's a lot more going on here. She reviewed my medical records and sat there and sobbed, which of course gave me like doom and gloom feeling, but more she was coming from compassion. She understood. So this doctor was reviewing the medical records and looking at me in this human body, kind of not, because I had my mind and body kind of left because I was in such physical distress. My organs, everything was shutting down. There was so much going on inside that's where you just get mentally confused. And anyway, she was explaining to me how this all happened, and her first question was, where do you live? And that was the first time at 41 years old again that I've ever been asked this question. And all along the human path, I've had immunity. I've had all these physical situations and mental situations, clearly, like trying to be the best I can be and trying to like stay physically healthy, mentally healthy, spiritual healthy. And all of a sudden, I could barely remember who I was. I was incontinent. My body wasn't Yeah, I couldn't feel that I had to go to the restroom. Many things were going on, and she explained the connection of what I was experiencing back to my house. So as the doctor reviewed the records and was looking at me before her, this body that's clearly shutting down a little bit, clearly, and looking at the biochemistry, looking at things, she was very, very concerned about where the beginning of my life and the path of which I was exposed to some things, and wanted to ask, what was going on in the past few homes I lived in. I had never heard of this type of questions, I'll be honest. I mean, sure, we know toxicity, but we definitely count on our water being pure and our vents, being when we turn our heat on, we don't think of those types of exposures, or I didn't. And back to the biochemistry, because of some of my genetics, the mind, body, and spirit connection and the genes missing, my body was basically like a garbage collector, like holding everything and not releasing, because I wasn't built in my DNA with some of those actual detoxifying cells and genes. So she began treating, as we awaited labs and everything to come back, she began treating with minerals and to treat for heavy metals, which come from pharmaceuticals, come from foods, come from your water. So we started IV bags at that point, and I was continually not getting better. And so after a couple weeks of, IVs, and my system was not improving, she really asked and advocated for getting the home checked. So she sent an environmental team to my home in Indiana, and these gentlemen showed up, and you kind of feel like you're having an inspection of sorts, and have a clean house. So again, I was just like, how could this be? But they showed up and told me I should never go in that home again. It was a log home that had a flood that was just not disclosed in the purchase of the home, and then inspector hadn't caught that the actual ventilation system was covered and riddled with black mold. And I didn't know this. We count on, again, people with their gifts and these types of things. It's all us to check on it. But I just, I bought a house. I had it inspected. I couldn't smell the mold at that point. I didn't really know this was happening. And anyway, it was explained to me that if I was going to remain in that house, I would be behind a charcoal mask and may not make it out. Like, it was like doomsday on my home, everything I'd ever worked for in my life, everything I knew, my pets, my ex-husband, our whole world was all of a sudden in question when you have environmentalists telling you your things and your bodies have been exposed to black mold. Along with the black mold in the ventilation was bat feces. So that as well was one of the contrast dye experiences with MRIs, was extreme histoplasmosis. And again, the labels were coming at me so fast, it doesn't even necessarily matter to reflect back on those kind of labels because it was environmental. So that's when it all really began for me on this whole new human path of really understanding when you get topped out with toxicity, what it does to you at all levels, materially, financially, physically, mentally, spiritually, in every way it comes in. Learning how to see what the best protocol for me was. Many doctors collaborated in Indiana and came to the conclusion that the way for me to actually get these toxins out was to continue protocols, intense protocols with remineralizing my system, getting pharmaceuticals, which I had taken years before for physical, mental, whatever, getting those pulled out of the system, releasing some inflammation, some trauma, and staying where it's dry instead of in humidity. So I ended up, which I'm thankful to know we have these types of places in our universe. I ended up in Dallas, Texas at the Environmental Health Center, where I met up with people that spoke my language. Since October of 2012, I felt like I was in a foreign country and no one spoke my language. I didn't understand how I could feel a day without feeling like my veins were pumping glass shards, and pain, and how to get through the trauma of looking at everything you've worked for, everything you know is all of a sudden taken away from you and making you sick and could possibly kill you. I arrived there, and immediately they went into action with what was my exposure on my human path. What was I exposed to as a child? That's when I really learned about mercury. I really learned about my high levels of mercury and how that affects one's brain, one's body, one's flow, to bring one's chi, one's high vibration of, keep one filled with energy and moving things normally, keeping our flow. They take a look there at, you have to go through chambers to make sure you don't smell of any chemicals or toxicity in any way. They have medical housing where it's glass, metal, no carpet. The water runs pure reverse osmosis. You're sitting in rooms with people that are there from Hurricane Katrina, from old coal miners, people that have been exposed all along and are now behind their mask. Their bodies, minds, and spirits are experiencing complete toxicity and trying to get through it. I didn't know these types of rooms existed in our universe, and I'm thankful that they not only exist, but that they're growing. The big part of this right now, as I tell this story, is, again, I want to reflect back to hope, because as I shared already, like my path of basically not walking or talking, and looking then around at many beings that were experiencing that as well, there are definitely modalities that can heal the mind, body, and spirit, and there are ways to get through this. There is a graduation, and with God, all things are possible. I knew that something was, as I was told over and over, you may not make it through this. This could be, my system got pretty darn topped, to say the least. And many people thought I had just lost my mind. And I'll tell you, when you are toxic, you definitely are so foggy and so out of it that there are moments you wonder what's going on. But of course, our vessel is not aligned. So of course, all of it's going to be out of whack. The best way that they explain is take it to cotton. Wear grounding shoes, eat pure foods, live in these types of environments, and then allow the body to heal. Stay around people that bring out the best in you, that love you and support you on the path. And check with also your circle, why you might be getting not getting so much healing at that point. What made us sick? It's not to project to others, but our environment and some compromises that I'm maybe made just on the path of, just trying to accept everybody and loving everybody, but when we're in relations with people that it's not of positive and not supportive, it can definitely impact our health. That was also under big spotlight at that point, because I saw these rooms that were full of people dealing with mold and pesticides and mercury and Lyme's disease and immunity and saw the pain and was experiencing it myself. And I knew I got to get to the other side. I got to graduate. I've seen people die from this exposure, and there was no choice ever in my mind. Even when I was told I might not make it, there was never an option out. But there was a lot of changes that had to happen, and it was highly suggested, and it took me a while to accept them. And once I did, I started healing at a much quicker rate, because my central nervous system had experienced such an incredible frazzlement from all of its poking and prodding and trauma and such. I had to take it as simple as I could. And when I asked the doctor, when I didn't have the money to treat my situation anymore, and my house had been basically shut down, so going back there was not healthy, I asked, and I was in a tricky time with relations with people. It was a tricky time. And I asked him what the best modality for me to heal at that moment, so that I could keep moving forward and get something done and help him help me. And he said to me, Grace, go to the middle of nowhere, find Mother Earth, take a lot of water, and call me. And I thought that was strange, but I did it. I was in survival. So I put my mask on, I put my few tools that I knew in my car, and took off and found myself at the border of New Mexico. And I finally found where I could breathe and I could think, because I was so foggy, foggy to the point of just basically just my body was just in so much pain that you're putting energy to not be in pain. But you know there's something you got to do so you can get something done. I found that place and I got out. It was at, I forget the name of the park. I got out and I remember dropping down on Mother Earth, and I could feel the radiation which I had been exposed to pump out of my system. I could feel my body pulsating on the earth. I could smell flowers. I could smell the air. It didn't have chemicals in it. There was no plugs around me. I could feel that I was in my body again, and everything was like clearing to the point of my system relaxed for a minute. But it took me getting out of the frequency of being around all these exposures, being in an environment that had humidity, being around electricity, being around any numbers that weren't matching, to get to the point to clear, for me to start understanding what these doctors were explaining my new path was about. Okay, so after the beautiful reconnection with Mother Earth and clean air and absolutely feeling alive again, it was a $1 million drive in its own when that doctor told me, I will feel relief when I get to clean earth and clean air, and then to call him. And I knew there was something to it, and by doing it, the minute I experienced it, it was an experience of complete celebration. I absolutely had relief sitting on Mother Earth and feeling that radiation come out and breathing in clean air. I hadn't felt this good since in years. I didn't know a person could feel that good that quick just by touching earth and being there. So I followed his instruction and reconnected with him, called him up and told him I had done what he said. And then he started unfolding the more about environmental at another level, a different way to look at it. So many frontiers in this type of environmental medicine. Dr. Doris Rapp, Dr. Dr. Ray, Dr. Grossman, Randy Miller, many on my path that I'm thankful for all of them for going before and looking at this from so many levels. I started really taking notice to everything I taste, touch, smell, hear, feel, and remember, and what was that triggering in my mind, body, and spirit so that I could get through this. I knew at this point, earth and air and pure water were my #1 medicines. That was like what was going to begin a real healing process, and staying away from anything that was going to trigger my nervous system, meaning toxicity and any drama or trauma. It was absolutely imperative to remain calm so these toxins could flow out. And I could do it. Clearly, I did not have any finances at this point, so I had to go to Mother Earth and connect with this medicine and go to God and trust the master healer, our creator, was going to work with me on this. That's why I was still going forward and still dismissing all the labels of gloom that this could be the rest of my life like this. I did not resonate with me. There I was in New Mexico. I met up with Melissa. I was doing a drive-through and heard a radio show, and I ended up on a computer. Was it on a computer? No, I made a phone call. I got the number and I made a phone call, which at that point, technology was tricky for me because of EMFs, electromagnetic fielding. I was so filled with metals. And I was crying out to God, like, send some angels. I connected with Melissa Stowicki, and she as well had experienced sensitivity and explained to me more of the importance of yes, to get through it. She had gotten through it, so explaining that pure water and air and the path I was on, as well as Dr. Ray saying the protocol of staying in good air, dry air, clean water, purity, pure diet was imperative. I had explained to her that I was, at this stage, I was alone on the journey. I didn't have support so much around me, and I was thankful for the alignment that God aligned us together, and for her understanding my language in this foreign country of newness to what my body was now working through to understand more. After we collaborated for a moment, she went right into assisting with solution options. There was a connection of an opportunity possibly to come to Arizona and work with an elderly doctor that had sensitivities and do a trade for some medical treatments to get these toxins out of me and keep myself moving forward and heal that which I was really, really having a hard time from. And Divine had another plan. So I faced a new road and went to Colorado to Grossman Wellness Center, and immediately started chelation, IV treatments, remineralizing my body. More and more people explaining environmental illness and pointing directives to like HEAL, which is organizations in different states that help people with environmental issues, multiple chemical sensitivity, needs. Christina, it needs counseling those that are all of a sudden experiencing these environmental sensitivities to everything you taste, touch, smell, hear, feel, and remember, and it really, really affecting them. And after collaborating with all of those teams and understanding more of what I was really dealing with and meeting people all along the path experiencing the same thing, really started tipping me off as a graduate in gerontology. I got a graduate certificate in gerontology, and knowing the mind, I really, really was even more empowered to find answers to how and why we have Alzheimer's, why we have some of these mental illnesses and such, and understanding as I was receiving glutathione and chelation and mineral bags and realizing wow, I'm clearing out. I'm getting my mind, my body, and spirit back. And these IVs and being in Mother Earth and air is actually healing me. Then I started realizing and opening up there's a lot more to, yes, mental illness and these other labels, whether your gut is off, you know, your gut is your brain. Hello. So they're connected. So really realizing there's a lot bigger picture going on here than just you have mold, you have pesticide. This is, you know, affecting me and many people. I was clearing out and really beginning to feel my body strengthening, but still the continued challenge for me was to find a place that I could live indoors, that there wasn't mold or carpet or a neighbor using chemical detergent. At that point, I was still experiencing the physical effects of, if I would smell these things, I would literally fall down. I was broken out in a rash if a chemical would touch my skin. If I had too many exposures in a day, I would wake up the next morning and I would have bruises and my blood was clotting, like things were just stopping. So I realized the importance of protecting what I was being exposed to by wearing a mask and stuff, but I had to make that choice to stay outside and be in alignment with other like minds if I really wanted to keep surviving. So things got a little tricky for a bit. This is where the spiritual council started really happening, and biofeedback and other modalities came into play to direct traffic, direct those toxins out, which when I say toxins, I mean toxic memories, toxic exposures such as the molds and pesticides and chemicals I had been exposed to, exposed myself to, perfumes, pharmaceuticals, to get those out. I really had to really look at that mind, body, and connection, and seek where I could actually go and be getting healing. And so that was in probably 2013 at this point. I understood that my situation to heal, I was going to have to either stay outside or look into environmental chemical sensitivity housing, which at this time, still presently today, we are dealing with a situation where there are many people in my position seeking housing that are living on the land, living in their cars, living around and unable. Doctors are begging for housing. For as you detox a person, you can get through it without exposure. What we smell hits our first organ, which is our brain. So when you are sensitive and you are smelling that which isn't serving you and you're having physical effects, you are having a mental effects. And I knew I was up against a lot of people questioning my mental stability. And the only way to show the reality of the situation was to keep my butt away from anything exposing myself so that I could actually speak about what I was dealing with. To stay off of technology, to stay outside, not to compromise in anything I was doing, whether it was company I was encountering, whether it was a food. I learned kinesiastics and quickly had to tap into other ways to understand if this was good for me. I must give much thankfulness to Dr. Doris Rapp for a lesson I really learned. A simple lesson, as I had been undergoing many allergy tests for foods and fibers and everything, because they start going down to the grind to what's going to keep you grounded, as so we can get the radiation and stuff out of your system. And what foods are safe, from rotating foods to making sure they're organic and pure. And she had said that if I ate a food, I would choose the food and I would write a sentence. And 20 minutes later, I would write that sentence again. And if my handwriting changed, if my voice changed, if any of these factors came into play, don't do it again. So that became my way to keep a gauge and keep on myself as best in alignment with this environment, still outside and seeking environment where I could be inside. I went back to Indiana for a stint to be near family and continue healing, and really was verified once again that once a mold exposure such as this comes into a person's field, it is absolutely imperative to stay out of humid climates. So I was experiencing extreme symptoms just going back to the Midwest, which had to stop. It was suggested after some very interesting things occurred, and keeping my eyes on God and dismissing judgments, projections, and hopelessness coming at me from others about my situation. I had to lasso to God and really go inward on what the best next step was. And everything in the home was gone and shut down for the final time at that point. And I was brought to Arizona in toxic shock to a doctor that 3 days after I arrived had an IV port placed in me, and I was hooked up to IV lines for 6 hours, about 6 hours a day, 4 days a week for 5 months, to begin a process of addressing the Lyme, which I hadn't really addressed. I had tried so many different protocols, and this was her way, and I went with it. The Lyme, as many know, is hell, pardon my language, but many people have been using antibiotics to treat such a situation, and for somebody that's had a mold exposure, the antibiotics actually fed the other problem. As well, I was undergoing chelation during these IVs, which was chelating heavy metals, i.e. mercury, my biggest trouble, still in my system. And when you chelate and you have your amalgam still in your mouth, and you're not in an environment that's sound, you are basically recirculating and putting it back into your liver, back into your whole, it's not exiting, it's just circulating. So 6 months of being in that protocol, and I felt like my body was begging for me to listen, my mind and spirit. I knew I was down in Scottsdale, in the Phoenix area, and the air, it was hard for me to find earth spots and air that I could breathe in my current medical situation. And this treatment was, for some reason, the protocol was not in alignment with getting me towards a graduation, and that was the goal, to get to the other side. It was absolutely backtracking. So that's when divine really started showing up on a very magical level. I asked God and Mother Mary and my angels of light, where and how, what was it going to take for me to live and really heal from this. And I had felt like I was definitely dealing with high volumes of victim consciousness, and I had to go in and mend my wounds and clear everything out of the field. So when I woke up after an intense day at that treatment, I'd had a dream, and it was really clear I was worth it, and I belonged, and that I needed to go out of that and go back to the beginning, go to air, go to water, get to where I could breathe. And divine aligned me with Sedona, and I placed my mask on in Phoenix on a Saturday morning. I believe it was like April 29th, 2014. And I drove out with an IV port still in my chest, my mask, and myself drove out again to try to breathe and save my life.
because I had seen so much. I knew this was not at all about me. This was an investigation of sorts. So I came up to Sedona, and Divine immediately. Sedona was like a loving beacon of light and answered prayer. Lots of earth to lay on and ground out my emotional pains, my physical pains and inflammation, opening up all my valves so things could flow. I realized the power of Mother Earth and of faith and spirituality. And the community really showed up for me. I had people that would notice what was going on and go into Whole Foods and stand by the coolers and fall down, and still experiencing this as I had just come off this treatment, which again I was also unable to totally complete due to financial disruption, but that was God's protection because it was not the right treatment for me. So just beautiful little things like Whole Foods offering for me to call in my grocery list, and they would gather up my groceries and meet me outside and give them to me because they saw I was healing, and it was actually dangerous for me to even be exposed to energetics of a cooler. It would aliven my immunity, my lymph nodes, everything was going. Fall down. So I was really thankful. Many churches showed up and assisted me in getting a great space that was going to do. We made it work. I had Gerard from Phoenix come up and check the environment for EMFs. I had Russell come up and check it for mold. I knew myself at this point I was pretty much a canine, and it was working. So I stayed there, and people showed up to help me financially. So much thankfulness to Sedona and to that community unity, that answered prayer. People really, really showing up for each other here. I've experienced many sacred lands, from Medjugorje to France, to experiencing, religious lands and experiences along this path all along. Coming here in such shape of great physical, mental, spiritual surgery, shall we say, reconnection, I was absolutely humbled and beyond thankful to the welcoming which I received. It opened up doorways that I didn't know, again, were even possible. I started meeting more and more people that spoke that language I refer to of feeling in a foreign country, and I didn't feel so alone anymore. I knew that the lands were filled with wounded healers, to say we're wounded beings that we're not going to accept staying wounded. We wanted to go forward, and you really feel in these types of communities, from Mother Earth to sky and everything in between, you feel that passion to understand and to heal it all the way and direct that traffic and take back your connection with God, with divine, and let the veils of labels of mold, Lyme, autoimmune, ADD, whatever it is, let that go and really go to the integration station of, I'm going to remap my body with the assistance of divine's help, Mother Earth's help, and trust that the right beings will show up to assist me as well. Those brothers and sisters who have been down this path or have modalities to share, to assist now as more beings come up. I'm really grateful to those that showed up in integrity. Of course, there are, everywhere we go, when we're in a desperate situation and we ask many people for help, sometimes we attract some things that aren't so helpful, and we have to really be on guard in a way about what we're looking into. I stand as a woman that believes in God and has experienced every bit of footprints in the sand, every bit of when I could not walk, talk, didn't know if I was going to make it. Our Father put me in his arms and carried me, and that is how I'm still here. I started understanding more about different things I was drawn to in life as medicines for me along the path, and reactivating those, such as music, movement, dance, like getting myself back into this body that had stiffened up so much from so many toxins in it, and allowing it to move and flow, and how to like be thankful for every breath I take, the air, the water, the powers of the red rocks, the sacred lands here. And again, much thankfulness to so many masters and elders who have gone before us and that are here now, working together to keep these spaces protected in love and light, so that more and more people can come and experience these healings. So 2014, it's now 2016, and what did it take, Grace, to get to this point and without a mask? And back in a frequency of love was really, really accepting that truth which was within me, and loving myself and loving every step of the path, learning not to project it anybody, any place, or anything, and understand I was part of creating this experience. I'm thankful for this experience, and I'm getting through it. And how did I keep that strength moving? The biggest thing that was important was staying out on Mother Earth. So for about a year, a little over a year, almost a year and a half, I lived out on Mother Earth. I lived outside in the elements. I stayed in my car and otherwise in a tent until the tent. About last summer, I started stopping the tent because we are undergoing some interesting things, as we all know, from our skies. And I was experiencing physical symptoms again, very, very highly, by being out in a tent, and chemtrails really affecting I noticed the absolute effects. As I'm a K9 for treble, I tried to send love and light to them and transmute and not think they were harming me, but over time, many people would say, from my living out there, there was about 2 months of heavy chemtrailing that my skin, my immunity really, really crashed. My liver, at one point, I even turned yellow, and I do not compromise on my diet. I do not compromise on my water. Even a woman on disability for pesticides, Lyme, and mold, which thankfulness that's recognized. I had little money, and all my money was towards my food, because indoor housing was, to find clean housing is astronomically expensive. So I chose that path, but the chemtrails definitely took my system back. I had to learn even more ways, different ceremonial tools, different medicines and foods to protect myself from now our skies, and keep positive about it. Remember, what do I pray to? I pray to God. I don't pray with idolatry to contamination or toxicity. I give, those are just effects of what we're all going through right now. But to be fearful of it is just false evidence appearing real. It's avoiding the chaos of the trouble and being a part of a solution. So I knew the chemtrails were affecting me, and I had to make some changes. So as this all unfolded, I started realizing some gifts I was given as well for intuition on how to direct that traffic, and how to keep myself loving myself, healing, and understanding where I was best going to be able to serve, be able to work, get my life back. Knowing that all, I tried to even get a job and was still experiencing exposure more at this point to the EMFs, which is electromagnetic fielding from the increase in chemtrails. It was bringing that sensitivity back up. So being inside of a building that had electricity was backing me up again. So I was laid off from being indoors at a job because of medical, because I couldn't stand up in my shift. So that became, you know, I kept learning different modalities along the way, from quantum techniques to Annie Hopper's dynamic neutral retraining of the brain, to biofeedback, to importance of grounding, importance of staying in things that supported my healing process, and all along the path being able to ignite others without fear on the realities of it. I really, really pray that people hear these messages and the many beings that are speaking out about environmental toxicity, and listen to us not from a perspective of we're talking about ourselves, because we actually are referring to what has become a very big situation, and most beings are sensitive and feeling radioactive devices from cell phones and, you know, just your exposures to your diet and such. As I unfolded my intuitions and knowing the path I chose, my biggest passion is to counsel others. You know, think about why children are getting mental health. Well, let's take a look at your water source, your air source, your diet, what chemicals are in the field. And I've seen by so many people becoming conscious about these choices, and really thankful for God allowing my vessel to sustain during this and bear witness to many people that this is an issue. And when we don't freak out and we just purify our homes and purify our spirits and stay in our truth and stay calm, there's really not much negative illness anywhere. So I'm really an advocate for beginning with your sacred space. I do spiritual counsel on different modalities to direct that traffic for, as again, everything that we taste, touch, smell, hear, feel, and remember is part of our being. So to get that in alignment and back to the purity which we all came from, we have to do different things to push and not to keep it moving and not have herxes or blockages that would clearly cause overload. So doing spiritual counsel and teaching some of these amazing, amazing tools, which I've been blessed to learn myself, learn from many elders that I've been aligned with, to bringing rhythms in, just so many beautiful, beautiful things. I'm happy today to say that I really physically, mentally, and spiritually feel pretty amazing. It's been a long journey, and it was worth all of it. To get all of the chaos, all of the stuff out of the field, and really, really look at the sweet nectar of this creation, of our Mother Earth and Mother Sky, and it's such a great time. So in any way that I can help people and give hope that no matter what label you are given, there is always a way to direct that traffic and keep that hope alive and keep your connection with God and keep your connection grounded to Mother Earth, to really step into your own energies of healing and graduate. That's my goal, is to see more people graduate. And check the homes and check their vibrations to continue healing. Thank you.